My mom yelled as I sat on kitchen floor, struggling to breathe. "You're fine. Stop making a scene." The kitchen floor felt like ice beneath my skin, the cold seeping into my bones faster than I could register. My palms pressed flat against the tiles as if I could draw air from the cracks between them. Every breath was a theft, half of it stolen before it reached my lungs. Above me, my mother's voice cut through the air, sharp and impatient. "You're fine. Stop making a scene." Her words didn't land the way she thought they would. They came to me muffled, warped, as though I were underwater. I tried to answer to tell her I wasn't fine, but my chest refused to open. My sister's laughter rang out from somewhere behind the counter, thin and laced with cruelty. She's being dramatic again. She always does this for attention. Attention, I didn't want eyes on me, I wanted oxygen. My vision narrowed, the edges turning black, as the room tilted, threatening to slide out from under me. Then a new sound, the heavy thud of boots against tile. An EMT appeared in my fading line of sight, crouching beside me. His gloved hand tilted my chin upward, scanning my face. His gaze lingered just a second too long on my lips before he keyed his radio. "Dispatch will need police backup." The word police pierced through the haze. My mother's tone changed brittle with indignation. "What are you talking about?" "She's fine." The EMT's reply was calm but razor-edged. "She's not fine. And I think we both know why." Through the blur, I caught a faint pulse of blue and red lights bouncing off the window. The oxygen mask came next, its hiss filling my ears. The first rush of air burned like fire in my chest, and I clung to it, terrified it might be taken away. Somewhere in the room, voices sharpened, questions were asked, orders given. But I only held on to one truth, something far more dangerous than my own body had been choking the life out of me, and it might be standing just a few feet away. Growing up in that house meant learning early which version of yourself was allowed to exist. There was the quiet, compliant daughter my mother demanded, the one who smiled in family photos, kept her voice low at the dinner table, and never contradicted her. And then there was the real me, the one she dismissed as too sensitive, too dramatic, or looking for trouble. Over the years, I learned to bury that second version deep, because exposing her only ever led to more ridicule. My sister thrived under my mother's rule, mastering the art of aligning herself with whoever held the most power. Where I was measured and cautious, she was loud and unfiltered, but only in ways that earned applause, never punishment. She knew exactly how to make herself indispensable to my mother, and exactly how to turn my missteps into a shared joke between them. If I stumbled, she was always there to twist the knife with a smirk. Our home looked normal from the outside. A neat lawn, freshly painted shutters, neighbors who waved as my mother offered practiced smiles. But behind the front door, the air was tight. Everything revolved around keeping up appearances, even if it meant ignoring or outright denying what was happening in plain sight. If I cried, I was overreacting. If I got sick, I was faking. And if I dared to speak up, I was making the family look bad. It wasn't always about big moments. Sometimes it was small, calculated acts that chipped away at me, a missing lunch packed for school, a locked door when I came home early, a sudden change of plans that left me stranded. Each incident could be brushed off as an accident, but the pattern was undeniable. My sister seemed to take pleasure in them often, with a knowing glance toward my mother, as if silently asking for approval. Over time, I stopped expecting protection. I stopped expecting warmth. I began to catalog everything in my mind, the looks, the words, the timing of every accident. I didn't know why I was keeping track, only that part of me sensed a day might come when I would need to remember every detail. And then, about a month before that day in the kitchen, I noticed a shift. My mother's glances lingered longer when I left my cup unattended. My sister offered to make me drinks more often than usual, little things easy to overlook. But deep down, my body knew something was wrong. I just didn't yet know how wrong it was going to get. The weeks leading up to that night were like walking through a room where someone had turned the lights down just enough for you to trip, but not enough to notice until you were already falling. Nothing looked outright dangerous, but the atmosphere shifted quietly, deliberately. Meals became more selective. If my mother cooked, my plate always seemed to be prepared before I even entered the kitchen. If my sister poured drinks, she would hand mine to me with an oddly expectant look, as though she was waiting for something. When I asked about it, she'd laugh, tilting her head just so. Can't I be nice for once? But the sweetness in her tone always felt like it had splinters. Small physical symptoms began to creep in. A dizziness that would hit suddenly then vanish. Stomach cramps after meals I hadn't prepared. A metallic aftertaste in my mouth I couldn't explain. I told myself it was stress, maybe dehydration. That's what my mother said when I mentioned it, her voice flat, almost bored. Drink more water. Stop overthinking everything. But I couldn't ignore the way she watched me sometimes, not with concern, but calculation, as if she were studying the effect of something only she knew. My sister mirrored her, though less practiced. She'd glance up from her phone eyes, briefly scanning me before she smirked and looked away. One afternoon, I caught them in the kitchen together, voices low. My name floated out between them, followed by laughter, the kind they reserved for jokes they didn't want me to hear. The moment they noticed me in the doorway, their expressions shifted. My sister busied herself at the sink. My mother smiled too widely, asking if I wanted tea. I almost said no. Something in me screamed not to. But I was tired, so tired of living like I was imagining shadows. I sat down at the table while she filled the kettle. My sister leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone but not really looking at it. That cup of tea sat in front of me for a long moment before I touched it. Steam curled upward, carrying a scent I couldn't quite place. I sipped more out of habit than desire, and the bitterness lingered at the back of my tongue long after I swallowed. My mother watched me drink, her smile never faltering. By evening, the first waves of breathlessness began. My chest tightened in a way that sent a thread of panic through me. I told myself I could push through it. I'd done it before. But by the time I hit the kitchen floor, I knew whatever game they were playing, it had just crossed into something far more dangerous. The first thing I registered was the cold against my cheek. Then the weight in my chest, heavy and unyielding like a locked door I couldn't open. I could hear voices, my mother's sharp, clipped tone slicing through the air, my sister's laugh skimming just beneath it. Their words were almost surreal, detached from the panic pounding through my skull. When the EMT arrived, his presence was like a shift in gravity. Kneeling beside me, he didn't waste time asking if I was okay. His eyes flicked over my face, then down to my lips, and something changed in his expression. His voice into the radio was calm but deliberate. "Dispatch will need police backup." That one word police cut through the fog in my head. My mother's reaction was immediate, her voice dripping with irritation. "What are you talking about?" "She's fine." The EMT's reply was measured but laced with steel. "She's not fine, and I think we both know why." A low hum of sirens approached, not the wail of an ambulance racing through traffic, but a restrained, almost discreet sound. Blue and red light flickered faintly against the kitchen walls. My sister's smirk faltered for the first time. The oxygen mask came down over my face, a hiss filling my ears. The air hit hard, burning in my lungs before settling into something almost sweet. My hands gripped the mask like a lifeline. The EMT's voice softened when he leaned closer. "Stay with me. We're not letting this get covered up." I barely had time to process his words before a uniformed officer stepped into the kitchen. His gaze swept over the scene, me on the floor, my mother pacing, my sister standing rigid. "Ma'am, I'll need you to step into the other room," he told my mother. She bristled, ready to argue, but his tone left no room for negotiation. While she was led away, the EMT moved quickly, slipping something small into an evidence bag. I followed his gaze to the floor near my overturned water glass. The officer glanced inside the bag, his jaw tightening before murmuring something low enough that only the EMT could hear. The EMT nodded once. The ride to the hospital was tense. The officer stayed in the front seat, his hand resting near his holster, while the EMT monitored my oxygen levels. Every bump in the road rattled my ribs, but the real ache was in my mind, threads of memory stitching together into a picture I didn't want to believe. At the hospital, I was wheeled past the waiting area without pause. Monitors beeped. Blood was drawn. A nurse's voice called for a toxicology screen. The doctor's questions were careful but pointed. "What did you eat or drink in the last hour?" "Just water," I said, from the glass on the counter. The officer's radio crackled. A voice came through talk screen on the glass, came back positive. Same compound found in the patient's blood. The officer looked at me, steady and unblinking. Miss, this wasn't random. And just like that, the fear I'd been swallowing for years hardened into something else entirely certainty. The doctor returned with a printout in his hand, his expression controlled but heavy. He set it on the tray beside my bed and met my eyes. Confirming ethylene glycol, he said. The words sat in the air like lead. I knew the term. Antifreeze. A substance that didn't belong anywhere near a kitchen, let alone in something I'd consumed. My throat tightened, not from the poison, but from the realization that this wasn't carelessness. It was intent. The EMT stood at the foot of my bed, his arms folded. The officer beside him took a measured step forward. We're requesting protective detail. You won't be going home tonight. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My mind was replaying every glance, every smirk, every unexplained symptom from the past month. It was all there clear now in a way it hadn't been when I was still clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't what it looked like. From the open doorway, I saw them, my mother leaning forward in a chair, speaking too quickly into her phone, my sister scrolling her leg bouncing. They looked unconcerned, almost bored. The officer stepped into the waiting area, his voice even, but carrying an unmistakable weight. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us. My mother froze. My sister's head snapped up, confusion flickering before her eyes darted to me. Her lips formed a single word, you. Another officer moved to my sister. She started to protest, her voice climbing, but the command was repeated sharper this time. The waiting room fell into a tense silence as they were escorted down the hall. For the first time, the chain of their control over me cracked. The air in my lungs felt different, not completely free yet, but no longer stolen. My uncle arrived not long after the only family member who had ever told me to keep a bag packed, just in case. He didn't waste time with greetings. He simply set a set of car keys on the table beside me. You're not going back, he said quietly. I'll make sure of it. By the next morning, the detective brought photographs, my tea mug, the container from the counter residue scraped from the sink, all neatly cataloged, undeniable. The lab results are solid, he told me. It's moving forward whether they cooperate or not. And just like that, the narrative they'd spent years building about me being dramatic, unstable, a burden began to collapse under the weight of something they couldn't twist or laugh away evidence. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defending myself. The facts were doing it for me. Court came faster than I expected. 1 month from the night on the kitchen floor, I walked into the courtroom in a navy dress, hair pinned back, every step measured. The room was cold, lined with reporters along the back wall. I didn't look at them. My focus was straight ahead. Across the aisle, my mother and sister sat stiff, their pale faces betraying none of the smug confidence they once wore so easily. The charges were read: assault with a deadly substance, attempted poisoning. The gasps from the gallery were almost louder than the words themselves. The EMT took the stand first. His account was clear, methodical. He described my condition when he found me the readings on his equipment, and the moment he decided to call for police backup. The prosecutor asked if my life had been in immediate danger. His answer was simple, without hesitation: yes. Minutes away. Then came the lab reports. Pages of toxicology results, photographs of the evidence, the mug, the container, the fingerprints. My mother's on the lid. My sister's text to a friend. Finally teaching her a lesson. There was no room for doubt. When the verdict came, it was swift guilty on all counts. Sentencing would be later, but the judge didn't wait to issue strict no-contact orders. They wouldn't be able to call, visit, or send messages, not directly, not through anyone else. Walking out of the courthouse, I didn't answer the reporters calling my name. The click of my heels on the stone steps felt like punctuation, each step a full stop at the end of a chapter I'd been trapped in for years. That night, I made one call, not to argue, not to gloat, but to leave a single sentence on my sister's voicemail. Turns out I was fine after all. Then I hung up. It wasn't revenge in the loud cinematic way people imagine. It was cleaner, quieter. I had walked into court with the truth and walked out with my freedom. My new apartment was small, but it was mine. No slammed doors, no footsteps stalking down a hallway, just silence, the kind that doesn't threaten to break you. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for the next blow. I could finally breathe without asking for permission. Sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, they come from the hands you once held in trust. My mother and sister didn't just fail to protect me. They actively sought to harm me, all while hiding behind the illusion of family. For years, I thought speaking up would only make things worse. I thought enduring quietly was safer. But survival isn't just about making it through the day. It's about reclaiming the right to live without fear. The night I collapsed on the kitchen floor could have been the end of my story. Instead, it became the beginning of a different one. I didn't win by shouting them down or matching their cruelty. I won by holding on to the truth, documenting every detail, and letting the evidence speak louder than my pain ever could. The quiet moments in that hospital room, the calm voice of the EMT, the weight of the officer's words, this wasn't random. They reminded me that justice doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it comes in the form of steady, undeniable facts. If you've ever been told you're too sensitive, overreacting, or imagining things, I want you to remember this. Those words can be weapons designed to make you doubt your own reality. Don't let them. Trust your instincts. Pay attention to the details. Document everything. And when the time comes, don't be afraid to put your safety above their comfort. The people who truly care for you will never make you feel small for protecting yourself. I walked out of that courthouse free not because I fought the loudest, but because I refused to be silenced. And you can too. Your voice matters. Your life matters. And the truth, when you stand by it, can be your greatest ally.